Have you ever wondered why your friend feels a different way about a certain character as you do? Well, so did we.
I'm Isabel Pecquet.
I'm Olivia Gales.
Sarah Bowden.
And I'm Susan Nguyen. And this question led us to develop our thesis, which is the idea that literature can be transformative. So in pop culture or in literature, you have two character foils. You will likely identify or connect more with one than the other. When this happens, you can analyze your sympathy for one of the characters over the other, and this will reveal an aspect about your conscious or unconscious that you were not aware of before. This also helps you to further your awareness of yourself and an understanding of how your mind works.
Psychoanalytical critical theory was based off of ideas by Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. In the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud developed 3 layers of the human psyche. They are the id, ego, and superego.
The id is base instincts and animalistic desires of the human person that are influenced by emotion and feeling.
The superego is the level of the human psyche that is dictated by logic, reasoning, rules, and responsibilities.
And the ego is the in-between. It mediates and has influence from both the id and the superego.
Freud also classified the mind in 2 different parts, the conscious and the unconscious.
The conscious mind is information that is easily accessible to you at a given time, and the unconscious mind is what's not easily accessible to you. So it influences your behaviors.
By understanding our connections to these fictional characters, we can analyze the effect that either the id or the superego has on our ego and can determine what kind of effect it has on our decision-making process. Our work of literary merit was Sense and Sensibility.
Sense and Sensibility is a novel written by Jane Austen in the Regency time period, or early 1800s, which centers around 2 sisters, Eleanor and Marianne, as they leave their home after their father's death to go live in a small country cottage. The older sister, Eleanor, falls in love with a noble and honorable man named Edward, who is unavailable to her, so she takes her feelings and harbors them secretly by herself. And the younger sister, Marianne, she throws caution to the wind and chases after a heartbreaker named Willoughby. And once he becomes unavailable to her, she just completely lets herself go and lets everybody know how heartbroken she is.
Eleanor is the superego. She is the superego because she is logical. She is dictated purely by reason and her responsibilities to her family. She shows herself to be introverted and reserved, and she does nothing before thinking it through. Some of the examples of her as a superego is the fact that she is in charge of her family's finances. She decides where they're going to stay, what they're going to buy, and at one point she even tells her mother that she's not allowed to buy beef anymore because it's too much of a luxury. In her romance life, in her love life, Eleanor becomes not enthralled because Eleanor's a superego. She never become enthralled. And Eleanor becomes interested in Edward and discovers that she cannot be with him because of a previous engagement. She hides all of the feelings within her because that is what she has to do to be responsible for her family and to be responsible towards Edward. Eleanor does nothing without thinking everything through. She speaks after she thinks. Her little sister Marianne, on the other hand, well,
Marianne Dashwood is depicted as the id. We see this because she is often shown as irrational, passionate, dramatic, and often speaking before she thinks, regardless of what will come out of her mouth. You can see this as her being overly dramatic, but what she sees is her being herself. We see this when she goes over to her ex's mansion in the rain and sits there for hours, nearly killing herself. She sees this as mourning the loss of her lost love. We see it as her just going crazy. We also see this with Miss Marianne by her sending letters to a man over and over again without a response. This showing that her inability to control her emotions and also proving that she's the it of the novel.
So personally, I connect more with Eleanor being more reserved and an introverted person. But
On the other hand, I am Marianne Dashwood without the Willoughby situation, and I think they would agree with me for that. And you would think that she would be like the bad person in the novel because she is dramatic and she can be irrational at times, but those things aren't bad things. It's what makes her her, you know? So sometimes I can be a little teeny weeny bit dramatic, but that's what makes me me. And speaking before, I think that is sometimes can lead me into bad situations, but it's not a bad thing. It's just what makes, Olivia, and what makes Marianne Dashwood.
In a dramatic role reversal that everyone saw coming, I identified with Eleanor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Eleanor's more practical side and logical side appealed to me more.
And oddly, going into this, I thought that I was gonna not identify with any of them, because I thought Marianne, I just didn't like how irrational and very passionate she was about everything. And for Eleanor, I thought she was very uptight, but as I saw whenever I read the book, she was very practical and reserved, and I really admired that about her. And I liked how she thought very logically and she thought before she spoke. So I really identified with Eleanor.
yeah, and I would like to just reiterate what Olivia was saying about how id does not equal bad. Id is fine. So if you like Marianne, good for you. Just keep doing that. Yes.
So when you read Sense and Sensibility, you get to know the characters better and you get to understand their personalities better. And when you do this, you will most likely form a connection with one or the other. And this usually happens with character foils, and one is the superego and one is the ego, and whoever you connect with more determines whether your ego is more influenced by the superego or the id. For example, if you sympathize more with Marianne, that may mean that you really express your emotions and you're very passionate, very headstrong. Or if you sympathize with Eleanor, then you are very practical, reserved, logical. You like to think a lot before you speak. For example, going into this, I did not know that I valued logic so much, but seeing Eleanor and seeing how she liked to think things through very logically and think before she speaks, I realized that that's a strong part of what I value.
Which leads us to our pop culture example, Phantom of the Opera.
Sarah, did we change the background?
Actually, we did, because a mean, scary man made us move from upstairs to downstairs, which actually kind of segues us into our pop culture work, The Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera is a movie that came out in 2004, whose screenplay was written by Joel Schumer, and whose music was composed by Andrew Lloyd Webber. The movie focuses around Christine Daae and the love triangle between her opera coach, the Phantom of the Opera, and her childhood sweetheart, Raoul. As Christine's opera career progresses, the Phantom becomes more and more possessive, ultimately resulting in a tug-of-war for Christine's affections.
Raoul is the superego. He is logical in that he likes to plan and think about what he's going to do before he acts. We see an example of this whenever he plans to trap the Phantom. He thinks that this is the best way to deal with the Phantom because he thinks it will result in their safety. Also, Raoul sees morals as very black and white. He sees something as either wrong or right, and he goes out to do what is right. He also is focused on not only himself, but the well-being of others, like Christine. He thinks what is best for Christine is to marry him and to leave the opera away from the Phantom into safety.
Now, the Phantom, on the other hand, clearly represents the story's id because he's passionate, he is impulsive, he is full of perseverance, and he has a clear disregard for the rules. For example, he kills a couple people just because they were just really eating away at him and they were in his way, and in the moment that is what was the right thing to do to him. And so he just disregarded any rule, and he just went ahead and did what he wanted to do. And another example is when he abducts Christine and takes her into his lair because he wants Christine. That's what he wants. So what he wants must happen in his mind. So he doesn't live in a black and white world, clearly. He lives kind of in a gray world where things are either what he wants or not what he wants.
So, if you find yourself identifying more with Rao, then your ego is being influenced more by your superego. This means that you have a tendency to see things as black and white and not in a gray area. And you make your decisions based off of your morals and what you were previously taught. But if you are influenced more by Phantom, then your ego is being influenced more by your id, which isn't a bad thing. This just means that you have a tendency to see things as gray and not in black and white. And you are more than likely making your decisions based off of what you feel is right. Our research suggests that when identifying with which half of your character foil that you are agreeing with reveals how your ego is influenced.
Yes, for so example, when I watched The Phantom of the Opera, I thought it was just a tragic love story that was supposed to have a sad ending because Phantom and the Christine didn't end up together.
To this day, I still don't think we're watching the same movie, because when I watched this movie, it was a terrifying thriller that had a remarkably happy ending.
So as you can see, we have a little bit of a, disagreement about these characters, which led to a little bit of a heated discussion.
So anyway, identifying with the Phantom, it brought to the forefront of my mind a couple of traits that when I saw them being acted out, I realized that I also had those, like being impulsive and being a little bit like disregarding all the rules. Like I don't have to follow every single rule. I just do what feels like the right thing for me to do.
And by identifying more with Ral than the Phantom, I realized I focused more on the morals I was taught in grade school instead of what feels right in the moment. I realized that I am much more a black and white person than a gray area, which I do not do well with.
I, however, do not specifically identify with one over the other, and this just tells me that my ego is influenced equally by superego and the id.
So what does all this mean?
So again, the aspects of psychoanalytical critical theory that we employed were Freud's ideas of the id, the ego, and the superego, as well as his explanation of the conscious and unconscious mind.
So once again, the superegos that we looked at were Eleanor from Sense and Sensibility and Raoul from Phantom of the Opera.
And the ids that we looked at are Marianne from Sense and Sensibility and Phantom from Phantom of the Opera.
Sympathizing with a character who represents the id or the superego tells us whether our ego is more influenced by the superego or the id. And since our id dictates how we make decisions, understanding this will help us better function in our everyday situations.
Our thesis reveals the transformative power of literature by revealing how our mind works in our connections to fictional characters.
So in researching our thesis, we learned that siding with a specific character can reveal a strength or weakness of our own character. So for example, me identifying with the Phantom reveals that I can be impulsive. So I should take that information that I've now learned and apply it and make it fit situations that I'm in.
Carrying this in our academic career, we can better use to understand what influences our ego to our advantage. An example would be me using the knowledge that my id influences my ego more, the fact that these characteristics lead me to be more dramatic or, impulsive at times. I will know to, slow down and take my time.
So this new understanding of our ego not only transforms how we see ourselves in the world, but also how others see the world. And this acknowledgement can help us to better work together with our different mindsets.
We set out to figure out why we and our friends view certain characters differently. Through our research and the application of psychoanalytical critical theory, we were able to discern an answer as to why we view these characters differently.
We hope you can do the same.